Hello, everybody. Welcome to day 5 of the 21-day guided journaling session. Good to see you here, Phil, Madalena, Kyra, and Kristen. Welcome. As I was sitting here, I was looking at the participants box that's here on the right side of my screen. And as your names were popping up, I realized my heart rate was getting elevated. And I was wondering why that was happening. And I just realized right now that I get really excited to know that people who are geographically far away from me, relatively speaking, are willing to show up for this. And it is such a gift. So I just wanted to say thank you. This is very special. Something else I wanted to share is that today my mind is feeling scattered. I have a lot going on in my mind. There are a lot of different clouds, nuggets, pieces of information, ideas floating around. So if today I'm a little scatterbrained, please forgive me. And hopefully, like life, whatever I say today will make sense in retrospect, backwards. And that's really the theme of today, is noticing that in this week of expression, which is to bring out, what we're really doing is we're going inward, not only into our inner state of being, but inward into our life, the way that we have perceived it since we were born until this moment. Yesterday, you all wrote your autobiography, so you got to go there. What we're really doing is we're recalling that part of ourselves, and we're bringing it out to the forefront. And as we do this, maybe what I'm experiencing right now with my scatterbrain is maybe what I'm experiencing is what comes from recalling life experiences. And especially when we were addressing the different life events and our relationship to those events, some of those are pretty intense. And if we haven't processed them, if we haven't worked with them, they may cause us to feel a certain way, maybe a little off kilter, or maybe a little bit more on edge, maybe a little bit more foggy or confused. But either way, whatever it's making us feel, it is telling us something. And this is something I've talked about a couple of times, but I haven't addressed here in the 21-day guided journaling, is that the way that I see our behavior and our process for behaving looks something like this. When we move, when we act, when we behave, we experience a feeling. When we feel something, we associate that feeling with a story, a thought. When we begin to think and observe our thoughts, our ideas, or that which is coming up for us, we begin to gain perspective. And perspective is insight. And insight is what gives us options. And when we have options, our natural instinct is to choose. And when we choose, the insight that we've gained from the thinking, from the feeling, from the behavior and the movement, then what happens is that we move again. And it's in that moment where we close the loop. The reason I'm sharing this is because this week, the week of expression, where we have been recalling who we truly are, or who we have at least consciously been in this life, we are in the process of noticing that which we have experienced, thus that which we have thought and that which we have felt. But we haven't got to the point where we have closed the loop again. but we're approaching that point, which will probably happen on Sunday. And then we'll restart this loop of moving, acting, behaving, practicing, feeling, noticing, thinking, and then being able to choose and moving again. And we're going to be going through this 3 times technically throughout the next, how many days do we have left? 16? Either way, we're going to go through it 3 times within the 21 days that we're together. And in behaving in this way, in this circular way, what we're really doing is we're not staying stagnant in one place. We are actually walking up a spiral staircase. We are ascending. We are elevating our perspective on each one of those loops. And as we do this, and as we become a little bit more conscious, a little bit more aware, we gain a vantage point. There are 2 things that happen. One, we begin to develop this inner sense of safety. And the other is we start to notice how connected we are to everything else. Phil was just showing his dog on camera. And I was just thinking about our dog, which is a very nervous dog. We rescued her when she was a puppy. And she has very particular personality traits. She can't walk on wooden floors. She freaks out when she does that. She's very protective over her pack, meaning if you become part of her tribe and her group, then she will always be protecting. She's the smallest one, but she's the fiercest one. When somebody new walks into a home, let's say somebody's walking in to do some work in the bathroom because we have a plumbing problem, then she will make sure to bark at this person as they walk in. And one of the things that helps her is when we pick her up and we bring her up to the same altitude, the same height as the person or the threat that she's seen. And this is something that we're doing through this process. We are elevating ourselves to a height, to a place where we can recognize. Remember, we talked about memory yesterday. We talked about recalling and recognizing and relearning. But in this case, recognizing that which we consider a threat and then being able to see it face to face as equals and thus be able to process it through basic contrasting. And this, when done in a way that allows us to be connected to that which we are engaging with, starts to elicit a certain sense of meaning. And it's a sense of meaning that comes from a place of what we could call oneness. And maybe you know what? I'm going to play this. I was listening to this earlier for some inspiration, so I'm just going to play this clip. See if I can play it for you. It's by Alan Watts, a philosopher that maybe you are familiar with. And the title of this little clip is "We Are Nature." Let's see, I didn't have this prepared, but we're just going to give it a shot. Let's see what happens. And the reason I want to play it is because it resonates with what I was alluding to just now. And maybe it will help us segue into the next piece and allow my scatterbrain, which I shared with you earlier, to reorganize itself and find a new base, a new starting ground. All right, here we go. Let's see if this works. Can you hear it?
The way an ecologist describes human behavior is as an action. What you do is what the whole universe is doing at the place you call here and now. You are something the whole universe is doing in the same way that a wave is something that the whole ocean is doing. Nature, human nature included, is an organism. And an organism is a system of orderly anarchy. There is no boss in it, but it gets along by being left alone and being allowed to do its stuff. We need a new kind of consciousness. Because if we don't experience ourselves that way, we mistreat our environment. We treat it as an enemy. We try to beat it into submission. And if we do that, comes disaster. Underneath the superficial self, there is another self, more really us than I. And if you become aware of that unknown self, the more you realize that it is inseparably connected with everything else that there is. That our real body is not just what's inside the skin, but our whole total external environment.
Very eloquent. Hopefully that resonated with you and landed in a way that, although may elicit this deep sense of responsibility, if it really is so that we are fully connected, which is something that I believe in, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it is true or that you should believe in it. But maybe this feeling of oneness can elicit this sense of responsibility that feels completely free. And how so? Well, our conscious behavior is a very small fraction of what we experience and do on a daily basis. Most of our MO, way of navigating this world, is unconscious. It's reflexive. And as I've said many times before, this reflexive behavior, which is the nature of nature, it's the nature of being human, although it serves us, sometimes it's guiding us in directions that are undesirable. And as I said in the beginning, life can only be understood backwards. Thus, you need to be guided in the directions that are undesirable in order for you to learn the lessons, understand where you don't want to go, and begin to direct yourself where you want to go. And this is what we would call becoming deliberate in our participation in this life. And the way that we can look at it, if we look at ourselves as a computer, where our body is the computer itself, it's the hardware, and our way of operating is the software, what we're really doing is reprogramming. And this reprogramming is really relearning. And remember that learning, from the word in Spanish aprender, which is to grasp, is what we're trying to do here. And Magdalena yesterday, or today maybe, shared in the group that in doing her autobiography and placing it on the timeline, she became aware of a certain pattern. I don't know what it is, but she became aware. The moment you see, notice, become aware of a pattern, of a way of doing things, now all of a sudden, you can't look away. You can't unsee it. Thus, you own it. It is 100% yours. And you may not feel proud of it. You may not like it, but it's yours. And the question here is, what are you going to do with it? I've shared this story before, but I'll share it again as briefly as I can. I can't remember what year it was, but I wasn't too happy with the way that my life was going. And I ended up being invited to go to Bali to teach a seminar. And I remember getting paid a fair amount of money, being flown out there, put up at a nice hotel, and spending most of my conscious or awakened time complaining about how tired I was, how miserable this was, how crappy it was to be away from my family, and how I was just over teaching the same thing to the same people with the same questions. I was having my own little pity party. Anyways, I got there, and on my last day, all I wanted to do was get on the plane and leave. I just wanted to leave that island, get me out of here. And this is the island where people go to find themselves, or if you're Australian, you go to get drunk and wasted. But most of the people go there and they say that they have some special moment of awakening and spiritual experience. I didn't have that, or so I thought, until I decided to go surfing. And because I'm not a very good surfer, I was seeking out an instructor, and the instructor took me out, and he took me to a break that was for advanced beginners, put it that way. I don't think they have levels to it. The waves were a little bit bigger than I could handle, and my board was definitely not the right size for those waves. Let's say that all the ingredients were, in my opinion, the wrong ones, the ones that would not work in that environment. And I remember just getting pummeled by these waves. I was getting sucked under. I was starting to feel really stressed. It was windy. I was confused. I couldn't understand what the instructor was telling me. He kept on just yelling things in languages that I didn't understand. I think he was speaking a dialect that they speak in Indonesia. So it was even more confusing to me, until all of a sudden this storm broke out. And when this storm broke out, I realized that the waves started to calm down. And as the waves started to calm down, I just took a seat on my board and I sat next to my instructor, and we're just looking at this storm passing by in the horizon. And it was beautiful. It was this amazing lightning show. I was sitting on my board. The raindrops that were falling were freezing cold, but my legs that were in the water were warm. And I remember just feeling this contrast of the warmth in my legs and my hips, and then the cold coming from the sky, and then seeing this beautiful display of light coming from the lightning, and thinking, wow, this is pretty amazing. And just a second ago, I was in a place where I thought I was going to die. It felt like absolute misery. And then the most amazing thing happened to me, which was I looked around and I noticed probably 30, 40, maybe even 50 surfers. There were heads and boards as far as I could see, to my right and to my left. And all of this time, I thought I was out there completely alone with this nutcase that was my instructor. And when I noticed that there were 50 people around me doing exactly the same thing that I was doing, and that were enjoying that very moment alongside me, there was this sense of inner knowing that said, this is what life is all about. You're going to suffer. You're going to experience hardship. But if you allow the storm to simply be there in front of you, to pay attention to it, you will notice the contrast. And in the moment of noticing the contrast, you will awaken. And when you awaken and look around, you'll realize that you are never alone. And that support that comes from knowing that you're never alone is very powerful. In fact, it was so powerful for me, and this may have been a coincidence or not, but as soon as the storm passed, a set of waves rolled in, and my instructor said, catch the third one. I caught the third one, and I rode the best wave of my life. And I remember being on that wave, and I had a moment where I was like, yes, this is amazing. And then immediately I thought, I don't want to go back out there. So I don't want to go back there. I'm just going to ride this thing all the way to the beach. And that's what I did. I rode it all the way to the beach. And when my feet hit the sand, I realized, okay, my life is currently in a storm, but this storm is actually not that bad. It's telling me something. What is it telling me? And the moment I allowed it to tell me what it was, the answer that came to me was work with what you have. And that's when I got on the plane that night, flew home, and I restarted my whole career. And this was years ago. And I've made progress since then, maybe not as much as I wanted to make, but the progress that I've made has been so significant, so meaningful that I would repeat it over and over again anytime. And I think when one is able to live in this way, where you're willing to repeat going through the shitstorm in order to get the learning, that the magic really starts to happen. And this is where there's a dance between our conscious mind and our unconscious mind. And in order to work with our unconscious and conscious mind, there are two things that I would like for us to have at the forefront of our thinking today, which is attention and intention. The word attention means towards stretching, expanding, energizing. Wherever we put our attention, our focus, we expand it. This is kind of like the effect of when you buy something like an iPhone, or you buy a new car, and then all of a sudden you start to notice that everybody around you has this same car. Everybody has the same clothes. Everybody does the same thing you're doing. You start to notice it more. Whatever you choose to focus on, you begin to notice. You begin to see it everywhere. So in our attention, can you guys hear my dog? She's protecting us. That's a sign. Wherever you put your attention, you will be expanding. You'll be growing. You'll be energizing. And then we have our intention. Intention means stretching inward. And intention is what transforms, is what changes. As you choose to show up for the next 16 days that we have together, I want you to start to think about this right before you click join. What is my intention for showing up today? What is it that I'm intending to transform today? And on what will I be putting my attention? Simply asking ourselves this is powerful. Now, something I learned a few days ago, which I thought was kind of interesting, was that in medical terms, intention means to heal a wound. So intention is healing. Healing is moving towards health. Health is wholeness. So that's what we have at the forefront of our thinking. So this week, in our expression, what we're doing is we're going back in time to understand the present. And we are acknowledging that the nature of nature is something that we participate in through our attention and our conscious intention. And with our conscious intention, we are reprogramming, redirecting where we are heading. And having that in our back pocket is not only us saying, I'm taking full responsibility, but it's giving us a little sense of participation, belonging. We are not alone. And how are we going to do this today in our journaling? Well, the way that we're going to do this is, as always, we're going to start by drawing our little AV model, and we're going to mark where we are. That's going to be the first piece. And then we're going to just allow ourselves to describe in a few lines what that feels like, what our state of being is. And then what we're going to do is we're going to get a little artistic, And we are going to draw in a little square, in a little rectangle like that. We're going to draw a self-portrait. And next to that self-portrait, that doesn't have to be beautiful in any kind of aesthetic way. It just has to be your own interpretation of it. I'm looking at you, Caroline, right now. And then next to it, I want you to simply describe who you see in that portrait. And we're going to call this your profile. Once you have identified who you're seeing in your self-portrait, you're going to answer a few questions. The first one is going to be around the body, the physical, the motion. And the first question around the body is, where and on what do you spend most of your days on? Where and on what do you spend most of your days doing or being? The second thing you're going to answer and describe here is, who are the people that you spend most of your time around? Family, friends, coworkers. Even if it's like this, interactive via Zoom or some kind of technological communication device. Who do you spend most of your time with? And I want you to really think about this. And I want you to write their names. Remember, this is just for you. So write the names of the people that you spend most of your time with. And then the third question, the third point or prompt here for the body, the physical, is I want you to describe what your interactions look like. And I want to emphasize here, look. What do they physically look like? Are they communication? Are they in silence? Are they assisting each other in some way? Are you working on a project? What do they look like? Once you've worked on that, now you're going to move to the mind. And when you move to the mind, I want you to ask yourself, why do you spend most of your time where you are and with the people that you engage with? Why? Is this because this is your job and you have to go there? Is this because this is your family and in this life you can't really choose your family unless you are choosing to have a partnership and start your own family? Why are you spending your time where you are and doing what you do? The second question I want you to ask yourself is, do the people and the things that you do nourish, stimulate your mind? If the answer is yes, just elaborate on why. If the answer is no, do the same. Just elaborate on that. And then finally, we're going to tap into our experience, our internal experience, our emotion. And this is something that you will have a little bit more clarity on because you've been practicing it this week. All I want you to do is to describe how you feel doing what you do and who you do it with. And I want you to try to be as colorful as possible in describing these feelings. And that is it. That's simple. So today, day 5, marks now that we are almost getting to the tail end of the expression week. And you'll start to notice a pattern in the way that you are writing, the way that you are journaling. Maybe there's already a structure within your uh, little notebook or journal that you use. Whatever that is, while you're not journaling, I want you to simply carry that image there. And I want you to imagine that structure that you've created, this way that you're starting to uh, put that which I am prompting you to do on paper as your own unique seed. It's your signature. And to simply acknowledge that, because that little seed, that little signature, by the time we get to week 3, will have some significance. And I look forward to, when we get there, to encourage you to review it, to look at it, to appreciate it, and see how it's translating. But for now, all you need to do is just acknowledge that it is there. I went a little bit over the 30 minutes today, but if anybody has any questions, please feel free to share them in the chat. I can see that Phil asked me to send the clip, which I'll do. Caroline has to go. Caroline, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. I'm so glad you could make it. Makes my day. And to everybody else who is still here, Kristen, Kyra, Madalena, Maya, Phil, Sarah, thank you again. And I look forward to seeing you in the group. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow again at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Until then, happy journaling. Bye-bye.